I really wish that I was just having some fun, gang. But I'm not. That last statement is now completely true. How do I know so? Because Uncle Sam's judiciary tells me so. That's how I know. In the state of Indiana, both people of a same-sex pair will now be listed on a baby's birth certificate as that baby's biological parents. This decision, like so many other bad decisions, and like I already alluded to, came from the judiciary, specifically the 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which, according to CNN, quote, upheld a lower court's ruling that by refusing to list both same-sex spouses as parents on birth certificates, Indiana was denying them one of the constellation of benefits that the states have linked to marriage under the Supreme Court's same-sex marriage ruling, unquote. Over at the website Slate, Mark Joseph Stern argued that this decision was actually necessary to ensure equality for same-sex pairs, writing that according to the appeals court unanimous decision written by Justice Frank Easterbrook, Indiana was actually discriminating against same-sex pairs because, quote, when an opposite-sex couple has a child, the law grants a presumption of parenthood to the father and lists him on the birth certificate. But when a same-sex couple has a child, the law denies that presumption and forces the second parent to undergo the arduous, expensive process of adopting their own child. Thus, when a woman married to a man uses a sperm donor, her husband is deemed the child's father. When a woman married to a woman uses a sperm donor, by contrast, her wife is denied legal parenthood. Except, this is not exactly how the Indiana law worked. Okay, strap yourselves in, gang. We're gonna get a little technical here for a little bit, but this is important to lay the groundwork for what comes ahead. In his 10-page opinion, Justice Frank Easterbrook explained that Indiana law presumed that a woman's husband was also the father of her child if 1. The man and the child's biological mother are or had been married to each other, 2. The child was born during the marriage or not more than 300 days after the marriage was terminated. The man and woman attempted to get married legally according to Indiana law, but the marriage was null and void for some technical legal reason, and the baby was still born during this time when they thought that they were married, or again, not more than 300 days after the said marriage was terminated. The man underwent a genetic test that showed that there was a 99% chance that he was actually the child's father. This presumption was the point of contention that was seized upon by the district court that originally declared Indiana's law unconstitutional. Again, as Stern argued, it meant that a woman could become pregnant through sperm donation, but still have her husband listed on the baby's birth certificate as his biological father, when in point of fact he wasn't. This meant, of course, that opposite-sex couples were being treated differently than same-sex pairs, unequally, we might even say. Thus, of course, making the law unconstitutional. Except for the slight detail that this isn't exactly how Indiana law was set up. As Justice Easterbrook acknowledged in the appeals court decision, the state of Indiana required a woman to list the name of the baby's father, not necessarily the name of her husband. Indiana actually had an official form called a birth worksheet which required this specific information. For a non-parent to be listed as a Barry's actual biological parent would require that non-parent to go through the same adoption process that same-sex people were required to go through. But because the district court decided that women might not know the difference between husband and father. Okay, just how stupid does this district court think that women are? Does it really think that most women aren't going to know the difference between husband and father and have to be held by the hand by Uncle Sam in order to differentiate between these two words? Is this going to become another example of toxic patriarchy? Or they might actually lie on the birth worksheet for any number of reasons, which, in the opinion of the district court, nullified the state's arguments. On top of this, according to Justice Easterbrook, the states still have the presumption that a woman's husband was the father of her baby because, quote, unless the presumption is contested, the husband is deemed the father too, with parental rights and parental duties, in a way that both women in a female-female marriage are not, unquote. As such, Easterbrook declared in the appeals court unanimous decision, quote, we agree with the district court that after Obergefell and Pavin, a state cannot presume that a husband is the father of a child born in wedlock while denying an equivalent presumption to parents in same-sex marriages. The district court's order requiring Indiana to recognize the children of these plaintiffs as legitimate children born in wedlock and to identify both wives in each union as parents is affirmed, unquote. To put this all into clear, concise English, gang, because Indiana presumed that a woman's husband was also the father of her children, the state has to presume that a woman's wife is an equal mother and biological parent to that woman's child. To do anything else would be to discriminate against same-sex pairs. Now, the first problem with this decision, both at the district level and at the appeals court level, is that it's preposterous on its face. Because of a little thing called the facts of reproduction, every time you come into contact with another person, you know that at some point in the past, a man and a woman got very friendly with each other. If you know what I mean. That's why the presumption that a woman's husband is also the father of her baby exists in the first place, because of pure biology. Now, Easterbrook does try to overcome this little fact by arguing that it is indeed possible for two women to be biological parents to a child. He writes in his opinion, quote, Indiana's current statutory system fails to acknowledge the possibility that the wife of a birth mother also is a biological mother. One set of plaintiffs in this suit shows this. Lisa Phillips Stackman is the birth mother of LJPS, but Jackie Phillip Stackman, Lisa's wife, was the egg donor. Thus, Jackie is both LJPS's biological mother and the spouse of LJPS's birth mother. There is also a third biological parent, the sperm donor, but Indiana limits to 2 the number of parents it will record. Mwah! This is dime store lawyering at its finest. A baby conceived by the egg of one woman being fertilized by the sperm of a man has absolutely zero connection to a second woman, even if that second woman gives birth to him because he was transplanted into her womb. Why? Because he comes from the first woman and the man. His body, his genetic material, everything that he is going to be physically comes from a mixing, a combining together of their bodies and their genetic material. He has absolutely no connection to this second woman who, in this scenario, has been reduced to an empty house, a storage unit. Now, this second woman, her female partner, and society at large may lie and say that she is a biological parent to this child, but that's exactly what it is. Just a lie. And this is where we get into the real meat and potatoes about why this is an important issue and why I decided to devote an entire video addressing it. Because this idea that 2 women, or pretty much 2 men, can be the biological parents of a child has far-reaching consequences. In the first place, it eviscerates the children born into these arrangements because it robs them of 1/2 of their genetic heritage. Here's the thing, because we are a mixture of our mom and our dad's genetic materials, we are also a mixture of their family trees and their family stories. And these family trees and family stories combine in us. Take me just as an example. Because I am a son of my father, part of my lineage is that my great-great-great-grandfather hunted down a pair of horse thieves in the Missouri River bottoms, when that was considered the beginning of the Old West. Part of my heritage is that my great-grandfather was born on an Indian reservation at the turn of the century. Heck, the very fact that my dad's family has farmed in the Missouri River bottoms for over 150 years is part of my heritage. Contrariwise, because I am a son of my mother, part of my heritage and part of my lineage is the fact that 2 of my great-grandparents came over to America from Sicily before World War I and achieved the American dream for themselves without either of them having a day of formal education in their lives. Another piece of my heritage from my mom's side is the fact that another great-grandmother of mine helped abolish hanging in Nebraska, as well as the fact that my grandfather fought in Europe in World War II. Now, because I know at least a little bit of my family history, I know these stories. And because I know these stories, I have been able to incorporate them into myself. I've been able to distill them into myself, and I've been able to make them a part of my own identity. And research backs up this idea that knowing your family history can help create a core sense of identity in you. According to Robin Fivush, a professor of developmental psychology, parents who shared stories of their lives with their children actually established a deep connection with their children. Writing in Psychology Today, Fivush said, quote, "Adolescents use the story told by the parent to understand something about themselves. For example, after telling a story about his mother standing up to a bully on behalf of another child, one adolescent ended that story by saying, 'So that's why I always speak up for myself, because she, my mother, was so brave to do that.' Clearly, this adolescent is learning something important about who his mother was and is as a person, as well as an important moral lesson about the world." And this only increases as the family stories are pushed further and further back. People have a deeper and deeper sense of who they are. As Rebecca Hardy wrote in the UK Guardian, because her son knows that his great-grandfather worked as a coal miner at the age of 14, and because her daughter knows that her great-great-aunt joined the service when she was just a teenager, these stories have given her children a deeper sense of where they came from, which in turn has given them a deeper sense of who they are as individuals. And this knowledge, besides from giving us a core sense of who we are, also helps us gain better emotional health. Family therapist Stephen Walters has said, quote, "We all feel stronger if we are part of a tapestry. One thread alone is weak, but woven into something larger, surrounded by other threads, it is more difficult to unravel." From our family histories, we can draw very powerfully the sense that we are not alone in the world, and the stories of our ancestors can allow us to draw strength, courage, and fortitude from their previous examples. And what makes this all better is because these stories are unique to us, because they happened in our family, they belong even more intimately to us. In a very real sense, we own these stories. But this can only happen if you are actually allowed to know your heritage, or at the very least allowed to find your heritage. This is why family genealogy, which relies on such things as death certificates, marriage licenses, and birth certificates, is so important to uncovering these stories. But children in Indiana now are going to be deprived of half of their heritage, half of their family history, half of these family stories, from which they could create a core sense of identity and from which they could draw emotional strength. These children, in all seriousness, are being robbed of their rightful inheritance. You know, it really is quite fascinating that in this time period, especially this year particularly, 2020 being an election year, where we are surrounded by presidential candidate wannabes, we are inundated with messages that the rich are stealing from the little guy, that big corporations are stealing from the little guy, that capitalism is stealing from the little guy. And there might be some truth to some of these charges, but at the same time that the rich, corporations, and capitalism are all being made the bad guys for stealing from the common man, from the little guy, children in Indiana are being robbed of their family stories, something much more important than money, and it is being applauded. And because this lie is being officially perpetuated by the state, both the state of Indiana and the U.S. judiciary system, the second consequence of all this is that it cements totalitarianism. And totalitarianism is worse, even, than the usual regular run-of-the-mill tyranny that we think of. Leszek Kolakowski, the Polish philosopher and historian of ideas, said that most of the despotic regimes in world history have actually not been totalitarian. What has set totalitarianism apart is its desire, its lust, its need to become all, to invade every single nook, cranny, crevice, and facet of human life, thereby turning us, every single person like you and me, into atoms of itself. And how does a totalitarian regime accomplish this? Through its ideology. And the ideology is actually expanded and advanced through what you could call the Great Lie. Now, the Great Lie is going to be different according to what totalitarian regime you're talking about. Hannah Arendt, in her book on the origins of totalitarianism, for example, says that the Great Lie for the Nazis was the idea of the Jewish conspiracy, parallel to the idea that the Aryan race was destined to rule the world. Contrariwise, in the Soviet Union, particularly under Joseph Stalin, the Great Lie was the advancement of the communist global revolution, particularly through the eradication of the Trotskyite traitors in the USSR. And this decision by the 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals that gives state sanction and the power of the government behind the lie that two women, or two men for that matter, can be the biological parents of a child, no different than a man and a woman, fits the bill perfectly as totalitarianism. It's like Orwell's 1984, where the mere fact of the Ministry of Truth printing something makes it so. This birth certificate says that Joey Smith's parents are Sally and Hannah Smiths. Never mind about the birds and the bees. Never mind about the facts of biology. Never mind about the obvious meaning of simple words like mother, father, and biological. The birth certificate says so, so that's what must be true. And if anyone out there isn't really convinced that this is a clear-cut example of totalitarianism, think about this. This is a lie that you are going to be forced to accept one way or another because they're being printed on official birth certificates, which means that you are going to be required to act as if there is no difference between a man and a woman having a baby and a woman and a woman, or a man and a man having a baby. The totalitarian ideology is going to command your assent. Anything less than complete and total obedience to this lie will be immediately judged homophobic, hateful, bigoted, and thereby grounds for excommunicating you from society. In addition to that, if the state can all of a sudden wave its magic wand in the air and declare that the basic, simple facts of reproductive biology no longer are true because of a 2015 Supreme Court decision, then what else can the state declare to be true? What can the state declare to be not true? Is actually there any grounding in truth and falsehood at all, or does it all depend on what the state says on a given day? If, after all, a person can have two women as his biological parents, then is anything abnormal? Is incest abnormal? Is polyamory abnormal? Is bestiality abnormal? You might laugh at some of those comparisons, but these are all things that are being pushed towards normalization. And this is where we get to the real important question. Who does this ideology benefit? Who benefits from this totalitarian regime? The answer is the sexual revolution, which formally really began in the 1960s, but which really had its beginning and its conception in 1936, when the psychiatrist William Reich coined the term sexual revolution in a book by the same name. And enthusiasts, followers, leaders, and Brahmins of the sexual revolution want this lie to be perpetuated. They want this lie to become the new normal, because if this becomes the new normal, if, for example, a child's parents can be two women, two men, a man and a woman, three men, 6 adults of varying sexes and gender identities, if all these things are exactly the same thing, then that means nothing is off the table. Everything can be normalized. Everything and anything can be declared good, which also means that anything that they do, anything that they want, can be good as well. And anything can be declared to be good, and everything can be declared to be normal, because you have taken upon yourself the power of deciding what reality is and what it isn't. You have declared for yourself the power to bend reality to your every whim. And that is a heck of a lot of power, which makes it understandable why so many people would want to have it. So many people would want to participate in this revolution and in this totalitarian regime. And the price isn't even too high if you think about it. All we need is to steal the heritage of some kids. No biggie. But as always, what say you? Is this an example of the unbridled totalitarianism of the sexual revolution? Or is this just another step forward towards actual real equality? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions down in the comment section below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. As always, if you liked the video, whether you agreed with me or not, don't forget to show your support by giving it a like, leaving a comment, and sharing it on social media. And if you like videos about the culture, politics, and religion, but from a different POV, then think about subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell for notifications so that you'll always know when I make new videos like this every Tuesday. Videos you're not going to want to miss. As always, thank you for watching, for giving me a little bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. And I will see you all again here next week, gang, on top of the stone. Ciao.